All right, welcome to SuggestCast. I believe my name is Lewis, but I'm not really sure these days. With us today, this is number 4. Number 4 is with us, and we are number 4, because there's 4 of us. And nevertheless, we have Ben over there, and
hello.
there's Ben, and there's Matt, and
Hey.
yeah, hello both of you, and then finally, there's also Vincent, and I think I'm Lewis. I'm not really sure, but nevertheless, this is the 4th cast we have, and usually we suggest stuff, and then I believe we talk about it, and then I'm not really sure. Ha 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 ha. So without ado, whoever wants to start off first, they are welcome to do that.
All right. Well, thank you, Lewis. So, my correction: you said this is our 4th episode. Although this is SuggestCast number 4, it is not our 4th. We've done like 5 or 6, but some of them were outside
yes.
the regular numbering system.
Indeed, yes. I figured you would fill in that the episode 0 and -4. So good work there. And yes, today we're talking about whatever the other me missed the other week.
Right. I believe we had 3 suggestions from last week. They were Pee-wee's Big Adventure, the webcomic Pixel, and some radio pieces from Fallout New Vegas. Is that right?
That's correct.
Yes. So which of these should we cover first?
I found the radio bits the most perplexing. I think I'd like to start with those and figure out what's
perplexing. I don't think I heard last time why it was being recommended.
It's being recommended as incredibly ineffective propaganda.
Oh, I see.
Like, probably the least effective propaganda, even inside of a fictional setting.
Yeah, well, I got the impression that was partly because the mutant dictator person was kind of crazy and didn't really understand
No,
the effect their broadcasts
they
would have.
explicitly state that they're not crazy in the recordings.
No, I got that.
well,
But
these play during the game.
During the game, you can find different radio stations once you come in range of them, and then you can tune into the broadcast, and it's a mixture of pre-recorded segment music. So it plays like a real radio station, and the information in this is relayed to you through just like a radio broadcast that you can hear like randomly.
and so you wouldn't be hearing all of those bits in sequence or anything. You'd be hearing them occasionally broken up by.
You would only be hearing them, occasionally interrupted by, fun music.
And only if you care to do it, right?
And only if you care to do it, yes. You could conceivably start the entire Black Mountain Radio quest entirely independent of listening to this radio station.
Yeah, so this is kind of optional side content from the game.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could get the gist of what the point of it was. I got the jokes, but it seems like it would have. I mean, is it more effective if you've played the game or have any idea what's going on in the game?
Well, see, if you can get to a point in the game where you find that pretty early, and unless you played earlier games, you wouldn't really know what mutants look like or have as good a frame of reference for what was going on there. It would be almost as confusing. New Vegas was your first Fallout game.
What's the story in Fallout, though? What's going on? Does it just
Post-apocalyptic, whatever?
Yeah, it's after bombs have dropped.
And is there like,
so
is there of like lingering radioactivity or a fallout that's poisoning the Earth?
Yeah, there's radiation all over the place. Like this, you'll just walk into a big seeping pit of pretty irradiated water or whatever. Everything you eat has radiation in it, and you have to get treatment for radiation if you eat too much stuff or drink too much water.
What happens if you don't eat or drink?
Then you're fine.
Yeah, you're fine.
Like in real life.
Just like in real life. There's a game option to turn on. You don't have to play it, but there's a hardcore mode where you have to eat and sleep and drink, so you will have to seek radiation treatment.
I'm imagining hardcore players sitting there watching their characters sleep. Yeah, hardcore!
You can skip the. Actually, there are mods that let you watch your character sleep. So I'm not going to say that there's not.
That's the way they do it. You got to give them the option to watch them sleep.
That's correct.
Otherwise, how's your player going to have a well-being?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really feel complete as a person unless I know somebody's watching me sleep. That's why I'm so grateful for the NSA.
Was that the voice of Cobra Commander in there?
I don't know. I love the voice acting for that. Oh, also,
I think that was
if you didn't
similar
pick up on
fact.
it,
I don't think it's the same person.
The announcer is Bodil, and the voice of Rhonda is actually the voice of the robot that the guy is supposing. She just makes up her own voice for him when the robot is broken.
Yeah, I didn't get that just from listening to it. I went and looked on
that
a
one's
Fallout
pretty hard to
wiki
pick
to learn
on,
more
but-
about it and saw it there.
Well,
It-
I don't see
The voices of Rhonda and Tabitha were distinct enough that I wouldn't have guessed.
Is this really all that different from other comedies where there's a tyrannical government that has, and has 1984 style, public service announcements, but they're always sort of parodied and ridiculous. I mean, I guess I can't think of a good example, but it seems like
Welcome to Night Vale does stuff along those lines sometimes.
I know Borderlands 2, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, usually though, whenever they're a fake propaganda sort of, they try to pump up the listener, to tell them how great their country is or whatever, and how great they are for being that nationality. But I mean, in this one,
There was some of that in this.
well, Tabitha outright states that the dum-dums are too stupid to even understand the propaganda, so why even bother telling them how good they are?
But she also says often that why wouldn't people be trying to get in here? It's great. Talks about some group of smart mutants having some flawed suicidal impulses, as shown by the fact that they try to leave Utopia.
Sure.
Here, let's institute a vote system as of right now, where we tell the audience whether they, if they haven't so far, whether they should accept this suggestion. What do you think about that? Can you
Well, that's
see where I'm going with this?
highly irregular. We've never done that before.
Right. That's why it'd be a new system.
So
Well, Lewis, what do you think?
it's a little late for that because they wouldn't be watching this without prior knowledge, considering this is a
Well, they might.
spoilers.
They might. This might be the first episode they've seen.
Well,
If
I believe
the
it
first
is.
episode- Sorry, go ahead.
It is a good suggestion because it sounds like there's some good radio voices in here, and I believe one of the very first parody radio games was probably one of the Maxis games. I'm not really quite sure, but it was one of the Carmageddons or Simcopters. I think the viewers should take the suggestion because it's shows how far we've gotten since those times.
All right, so Lewis votes for. Vincent?
Um, for taking the suggestion, I vote against the suggestion. I don't think that it is a useful cultural reference point.
Yeah, I
think-
wasn't considering the approach, but
So I'm tempted to vote for because it's short. So if you're at all interested in finding out what we're talking about, you could experience it very quickly at very low effort. But I don't feel like it's something that I'll need to refer back to very often at all. So I think I'm going to vote against.
Huh? Oh. Stalemate, because my suggestive theory is that it was Matt who suggested this one.
Correct.
And I'm for it. So I think there's a tiebreaker somewhere along the lines.
All right,
future.
So listeners, the SuggestCasters are deadlocked. What do you think? Weigh in the comments.
Don't be shy. Okay.
Honestly, the SuggestCast comment threads are much better than most YouTube comments. In that we have no comments.
Yeah.
Okay. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, Pixel.
Pee-wee's Big Adventure. All right, did we all watch this?
Yeah, why was Pee-wee's Big Adventure suggested?
Okay, so and I've said this before, but I think Pee-wee's Big Adventure is almost standalone, not quite, but as a character-based comedy that does not rely on the character being wacky and interacting with normal people, and the humor coming from the wackiness of the main character, which is the formula that comes with almost every character-based comedy. At least the crummy stuff you get from like Saturday Night Live, characters who are getting their own movie. That's the formula. Pee-wee's Big Adventure, you've got maybe 10, 15 minutes at the beginning, which is just, hey, look at this guy and how crazy he is, which I think, your mileage may vary at that point. Like, either you think it's really funny or it's super annoying. But even if Herman is a fairly annoying character, once the movie takes off, constantly interacting with people who are funnier than him, at least in the weirder, goofier, you know what I mean? I think an example of the correct or a good non-lazy way to make a movie based around a character, and it's not the way that most movies like that are done. So I think it's a useful reference point if you're talking about some other character-based comedy that would come out. You might say, is it more Pee-wee's Big Adventure, or is it more, Happy Gilmore, something like that?
Happy Gilmore wasn't an SNL movie.
That's not the
I think a large part of the humor.
It was close.
I think a large part of the humor does come from Pee-wee's interactions with other characters, though. I mean,
with normal.
Well,
like
him doing that dance to Tequila.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking of. Like, he just
That's
breathed
primarily about him having this unusual thing he does in an odd situation. And, and part of the humor there is certainly the bikers' reactions, like the way they seem kind of wary and disdainful at first, but then they start really getting into it.
Yeah, when he starts breaking things for no reason. I still don't.
Yeah, where he does that kind of tiptoeing across the bar part.
Yeah, I mean, obviously he's
just kind of
part
rocking out
of the wacky interactions that are going on or whatever, but it's not normal people reacting in shock at the weirdness of the character.
Okay, wait.
I think I see what you mean.
Can you think of an example? of that in a movie that you're trying to say is a different? Because
Sure.
I really can't remember too many SNL character movies.
Sure. Okay, take the movie Coneheads. That's an SNL-based, character-based movie. Essentially, the entire movie is the Coneheads interacting with uninteresting human beings who are shocked at the alien behavior of the Coneheads.
Yeah, it's a movie where the whole point is for them to do the Coneheads voice and have those cones on their heads.
Or even, I mean, I mentioned Happy Gilmore. Happy Gilmore might not be the worst offender, but I still think it's a movie where it's essentially...
That has good parts.
Yeah, yeah, so I hate to single it out. Maybe Billy Madison would be a better example, but...
Like, Happy Gilmore has a bit of this Pee-wee's Big Adventure stuff in Bob Barker scene.
Yeah, a little
that's
there.
Closer to what you're getting at with what Pee-wee's Big Adventure does right.
Yes.
Okay, so you're saying that Pee-wee's... What you're essentially recommending Pee-wee's Big Adventure for is that there are no normal people in it, except for maybe Dottie screwed up remaking Pee-wee in the first place.
I don't think normal is really the right way to look at. I had not seen this movie in over 10 years, and I was struck by how well realized all the secondary characters are. There are a lot of them in this because it's largely a collection of set pieces.
Yeah.
But like that waitress at the diner who wants to go to Paris and has that abusive boyfriend.
Yeah.
Gets a lot of screen time, and Pee-wee's role in that screen time is not really doing much. Like he's basically there to just sit around, tell her to follow her dreams.
Yeah,
She
and
she drives all the action.
She's part of a different movie, and then Pee-wee's Big Adventure intersects with her, and Pee-wee just has a bit part in that.
I think that's a great way of putting it. That's kind of what it's like with the different people he runs into. You know, from Large Marge to Simone to I don't know, the actors on the lot that he runs into. I mean, to the the father.
The hobo who really likes singing.
Yeah, way too much. Well, one thing, I watched this today with me and my two brothers. And one thing we kept noticing was all the shortcuts they had taken to reduce the cost of the movie. Like, it takes place a lot where it was shot,
Yeah.
that's easy, but it works. And also, there are a lot of scenes that simply take place in a big, completely black room, like after Pee-wee gets stranded in the middle of nowhere.
Oh yeah, there's that part where it is just a black screen with cartoon eyes.
Yeah, and it's all very tastefully done, though. It's not it's not painful or cheap to look at.
Yeah, I think it's hard to say whether that was really a cost-saving maneuver or just a stylistic preference. I mean, remember, this is Tim Burton's first full-length movie.
First movie.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. One thing I was going to say, there are a few shots in this. I didn't remember that, but there are a few shots in this that remind me of a Wes Anderson movie. Like there are a few shots where like Pee-wee will be centered in the middle, or like it'll be a static frame with just Pee-wee running across the screen, and like it's pretty far away, and it's like, is this a Wes Anderson movie? And then it's like, there's that scene with the ambulance. This is a Tim Burton movie. It's definitely a Tim Burton movie. Once the fucking clown ambulance comes out.
See, I thought you were going to bring up the scene where after his bike is stolen, he's wandering around, walking sadly while everybody else is riding bikes past him. And then he goes in front of a bicycle store, and he's just staring at these spinning wheels in the window, and he turns to face the camera, his face is all shadowed and forlorn. It just lingers on that.
A lot of the most effective gags were just the cinematography, though.
Yeah, I'm really glad that this movie holds up because I have fond memories of it from childhood, and I was worried that I would find that's worse now.
No,
I think
so good.
But if anything, I think
Yeah, I think I enjoy it a lot more as an adult than I did as a kid, or at least I understand.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I
I didn't
really
hold my
should
interest
have
at
guessed
all when
that
I
would
was a
happen
kid.
because my parents also really liked it when I watched it as a kid.
So
Yeah,
what do we? What's the vote on Pee-wee?
I mean, I'd
Right.
recommend it, but I completely line up with for the reason that Vincent recommended it for. But yeah, it's a great movie. Everybody should watch it.
And actually, Vincent, you and I were talking the other day about kind of a side thing, but that line near the end when the movie based on Pee-wee's adventure is being shown, Dottie asks him at the drive-in, "Don't you want to stay and watch your movie?" He says, "I don't need to. I lived it." And honestly, I think this is worth experiencing just for being able to refer back to that line. So that's a pretty useful sentiment in a lot of contexts.
Yeah, and it seems it's like for me, it's so ingrained in my vocabulary. Like when we were talking, I wasn't even sure that it really originated with that movie because it seems
Yeah.
almost like the expression "raining cats and dogs" or laughing all the way to the bank. It just seems like such a cliched thing because it's so well established. But it may have just
Right,
come
but
from.
I'm not certain that came from this, but that's certainly the place I know it from.
And it may be the best application of the line. If it is used in other places, this
Yeah,
may
especially since it's pretty clear that the story in the movie they're watching is not the same as the story in the movie we have watched.
Oh yeah, so much great.
It's a useful line that he is misapplying.
But that's the only way I use the line though, is in a situation where
I use it straight up sometimes.
Oh yeah.
Like I think when we were talking about before it came up, because I was talking about not needing to watch a YouTube video of a conversation I was in.
You really meant it.
Yeah.
You don't need to watch it.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably will not be watching this video.
Okay.
But to all our viewers, I still think you should watch it.
Yeah, you didn't live it.
Yeah.
Don't be smart.
By watching it, it'll be like you lived it. So you're getting my life
lived it
experience.
having seen it already.
I'll probably
Okay,
watch some of
Lewis
that.
still there?
Yeah, Lewis, you still with us?
Oh yes. Yeah, I believe that. I think if you like Tim Burton and you want to see a timepiece, yeah, definitely. But if you don't have the time aside, put that on hold and but keep it there because it's a good film and you want to see it because he wears a bow tie and he has a cool bike, but you don't really get to see much of the bike. But what you do see of the bike is pretty amazing and.
I think you get to see enough of the bike.
Yeah, if you ever had a bike with all the bells and whistles, and then you lost it, and then you found it later, this is the coming of age film for you, and yes, it's also a timepiece from that era. So I'd have to say, yeah, why not? It's I'll vote yeah. Oh.
Right, thank you, Lewis.
All right, Pixel.
Pixel. See, so that's a webcomic I recommended.
And
first of all, how much of it did you read?
I'm sorry, Ben. I could only read 160 strips of it.
That's plenty, I think. I wasn't necessarily suggesting reading the entire thing. As much as you want.
I made it to 210, but I left it to the last minute, so I more ran out of time. I would have finished it all if I had started a little sooner.
Yeah, that's fair. I think sounds like both of you read enough of it to certainly form a supported opinion.
So what was the idea?
Yeah, what was the reason for this?
Well, I think what I said was that I was interested by his approach to world building and like the type of consistency that he seemed to be going for.
You mean like making something up and then learning how much of a bad idea he thought it was?
Yeah, kind of improvising some things and then just kind of going with it and acting like he thought there was something coherent there.
Yeah, I can kind of see what you're
like
talking.
When you...
Like, I think an example of that would be where he talks about the rules for how pixels give birth. Like, whenever a pixel dies, a new young version of them is born from a similarly colored parent.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to be tied to any sort of sex or even pregnancy system. They just pop out.
What I thought was interesting about Pixel was it really kept me on the fence about whether the author was like a bad cartoonist or like was really doing a bad job making the comic or was deliberately making a bad comic and being funny about it, which isn't unique, but they kept me on the I'm still on the fence about it. Like I still don't know.
So am I, to be honest.
Vincent, I'm going to tell you right now, I thought Ben was about to reprimand Vincent for thinking it was a bad comic.
Well, the SuggestCast isn't about whether things are good or bad exactly.
No, but in this case,
we
the
Thank you, Lewis.
I believe it was the official episode 2, but probably 3 or 4 in the archives.
It's described as SuggestCast number 2, but it's actually the 8th episode we did.
Yes, of course.
Just during last summer.
But like the comics themselves, I don't think there's not a single funny comic until you get like past 100. I don't think. Like if you just read the comics, they are uniformly
I disagree.
Not funny. The joke is always in the statements down below the comic from the author.
Yeah, the author comments are great. I probably should have said something about that in the suggestion last week, actually.
Yeah, I didn't figure it out until I was about a dozen comics in, and I started looking at the comments, and then I went back and read them all. But it's absolutely the story of the comic is more about the story of the making of the comic by the author, which is told in the notes that accompany each comic. And eventually there are some legitimate funny comics, but they're sort of few and far in between. Mostly the jokes are in the comments that I can't tell whether they are sincere or whether the author has concocted this persona person who doesn't know how to make a funny comic. And I've read I've got like 50 of them left to go, and I can't tell. And I think that's really unusual for comics of this sort. You know, Pokey the Penguin, I guess, would be something else where you could look at and not know at first, is the author deliberately making lousy comics? Is the author just an idiot or terrible at this?
Is he so bad at erasing that he just has a bunch of crossed out words in there?
Or, something. Or
maybe he wants to leave it for posterity. This was my mistake earlier, and I'm going to leave it there so I remember.
It's all about honesty.
I don't know. What did you think, Matt?
I disagree. I think there were some legitimately funny comics before 100, but I think maybe I'm seeing threads that are maybe too far apart. to make it funny, to be funny so bad that I made it fun in my mind. But
Well, humor is partly in the eye of the beholder,
sure.
because it's partly
Art?
like beauty.
Yeah, it's I didn't read as many of the author comments as maybe I should have. I got a lot of reading fatigue from it. It's not like the struck me about it is like it felt like. I know you're going to say that I'm projecting or whatever, but I felt like he made a lot of these comic strips at one time and then came up with the decisions for when he posted them later. And like, he did huge batches.
It could be.
There's not a lot to
Yeah, I
them.
could see that being possible. I
And
don't
then,
remember
instead
seeing
of
him say anything in particular about his schedule of making and posting them, so I don't know whether that
also
is in fact the case.
before I was able to figure out what year they were from, it's like, man, this humor seems really early 2000s, and I was like, oh, it is early
Yeah.
2000s. Look at that screen game. Well, that was the really great comics. Was the 9/11 Remembrance comic AOL screen cap of the banner ad. Click here to.
Yeah, click here to remember 9/11.
Yeah, I was surprised too when I realized how old the comic was. It probably was not as corny a comic at the time. Like now, the idea of a comic with poorly rendered characters.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that just further confuses me as to whether it was intentionally bad or not. Because at the time, you could have done something like this, and it might have seemed like you were making something.
No. Well,
Was that?
If you didn't notice, there are huge gaps in his schedule that he makes. There's like I know at least one point that he goes months without updating. Oh man, I cut out, didn't I?
Mm-hmm. No, gotcha.
Okay.
It starts off in 2002.
But this comics, yeah, and it spans over 10 years. If it's because his last update was in 2014, and I think that as he was writing it, he was realizing that it was bad, even though if it had been like a legitimate error. I mean, he was just sort of making fun of his past self, you know?
Oh, that could be. I mean, the thing is, a lot of times his comments on his comics remind me of the comics curmudgeon's comments on newspaper strip comics, you know what I mean? Where he explains what the joke is in a way that makes clear that the joke is not funny, like it's not witty or insightful or anything. It's a really stupid joke. But he does it in a very deadpan way. That,
he couldn't figure out a way to put that in the himself. I'll just put it
in terms of the world,
talk about how the central idea of a strip doesn't actually make sense when you think about it. Other times he'll talk about how clever he is for coming up with this idea.
But in terms of the world-building aspect, I think this is probably a good example of a case where an author has put effort into world-building in a context where it's completely unnecessary and does not aid the work in any way, except maybe to the extent that it's amusing, that it's totally unnecessary and doesn't seem to aid the work.
Well, I don't know. I think it aids the work to some extent, and that helps the author come up with ideas for strips. Like with the birth system, he has a strip fairly late in the archives, I don't know the number, where there are two pixels talking. One of them is green, and in the middle of their conversation, like a couple dozen green babies shoot out of the green one. And the explanation is that a bunch of pixels must have been on their way to a green convention and their bus crashed.
Well, at least maybe it's not it's not a world that people are going to be particularly engaged in. Like it's not a situation where inconsistencies in the premises are going to bother anybody, or that people are going to be escaping into this fantasy realm. I mean, obviously, I guess establishing attributes of the pixels and things is part of the comics he creates later, but the sort of specificity and consistency that he tries to put into the world building is disproportionate to the actual interest the reader has in the world that he's creating. Is the way I'd see it. I'd give it a thumbs up. I'd give it a thumbs up. I agree with Ben's initial suggestion. I don't know that you need to read all the comics. I would read as much as you enjoy reading. I think you can read a couple dozen and kind of get the idea. But if you like it, read more. But you got to read the author comments.
I'd have to recommend reading Comics Curmudgeon instead of this, so that you can understand the reference of referencing Comics Curmudgeon when talking about this. The Comics Curmudgeon would have been a better example of what we actually ended up identifying with, rather than what Ben actually wanted us to see in it.
Well, wait, what are you saying Comics Curmudgeon is a better example of, exactly?
Well, it's a better example of the joke is pointing out how the joke in the comic is not funny. Only,
that's exactly what Pixel is doing, though. Because
you're
never really sure what he's thinking about.
Not according to Vince.
Well, no, even I'm saying
it looks like this.
It's sort of ambiguous sometimes. I don't know.
It would be like if you didn't know whether or not the Comics Curmudgeon guy genuinely loved Apartment 3G.
Yeah.
I think he does.
Yeah,
Anyway.
yeah, that's pretty obvious. It would be like if you weren't sure.
I like the hexadecimal.
Josh Frulinger, that's his name.
Right.
Josh
People
Reed.
know him as that guy who does Comics Curmudgeon.
Josh Frulinger, you're probably watching this. If you appreciate the shout out we've given you, you feel free to reciprocate.
Yeah, sure you will. Yeah, Josh, I saw you do some stand-up in DC one time. You're fairly good at. Oh, a web ring. We should form a web ring.
Josh, you won't. Okay.
Let's go on Comics Curmudgeon every morning for the next week, and we'll each independently post requests that he form a web ring with the SuggestCast.
We could just buy ad space on his site. Doesn't he do that?
I don't want to spend money.
It's true, we
Yeah,
could.
that's true. It would cost money. Never mind. Josh, if you want to
We could.
do some free ads for us, let us know.
And we will continue to plug your website on our
On
podcast.
whatever occasions it's instrumentally useful in talking about the other things we suggest.
Yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
even flow on that. All right, suggestion.
So wait, Lewis, what was your vote on whether Pixel is a good suggestion?
Well, I'm flipping through all these, and besides a random button, I think it's got everything else. I like the hexadecimals in 5, where he's like, where he's saying I'm FF0000, and it's like, my name is 000FF, and the red and blue, and I can totally relate to that, of course, because if you've ever done any HTML editing and you just start memorizing your favorite colors by the hexadecimal, then this is where you can relate here, and it looks like I think the footnotes I don't know if they're an appendage to the joke or if I think they're just an extra interesting read to go with it, and I think it was a good suggestion, and it's definitely click the all button because you see it like it's a kingdom of comics all jumbled in together like a big thumbnail. So yes, indeed, I endorse this one.
All right.
Looks like we all did pretty well except for Matt.
Yeah.
Gonna step it up this week with the suggestions. Do you have a suggestion this week, Matt?
No, I don't.
All right,
Well-
Lewis, do you have a suggestion?
Well, sheesh, I was trying to think of something on the fly, but I'd say just I'd say do a search for some of your favorite appliances. You know, not at a department store, but in a search engine, and then add a color to them. You know, like if you like mouses or mouse pads, I'd say look up magenta mouse and see
is
if
a
you can find a new
mousepad-
perspective on it.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Lewis, I
magenta
have
mouse
to
pad.
cut in here, Lewis. Is a mouse pad an appliance?
I think.
I mean, I will admit right off that I'm a little fuzzy on the exact boundaries of the appliance concept.
That is indeed why. You know, I was, I had to sort of think about it, but that's a good question too. Research on whether or not mouse pads are appliances, and what is appliance and what not.
That's the one
Okay.
thing you cleared up for your suggestion to make sense. It's just whether mouse pads apply.
Well, I think what Lewis is getting at here is that we should be like thinking about the things we use and other color possibilities they have. Am I right?
Yes, that sounds right.
Okay.
Okay,
Yes.
I guess we gotta do it.
Alright, so that's Lewis's suggestion, Vincent.
Fucking typed on an upside down keyboard. I guess now I gotta look for a different colored mouse pad. My suggestion.
Oh, sorry. That was Barry's suggestion.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to attribute it to you, Lewis. But my suggestion is in the spirit of Brian's previous suggestion, in that it is an activity, not an artistic work. And this is going to be a tough one, but I want everybody to really try to do it. This is going to be tough. I want you we are going to get 8 hours of sleep every night for the next week.
Whoa.
Not counting tonight. It's already late.
Wait, not counting tonight?
It's gonna be, well, I couldn't do it. It's too late now.
Yeah, I could try.
Doesn't have to be
You're not
in a
going
row.
to be.
8 hours every night. This is a good challenge. I like it.
Doesn't have to be in a row. You can take
That is
naps
tough.
during the day if you want, but you got to get 8 hours of sleep a day. Now, it's been a while since I've done that. When I was in college, and there's a lot of staying up way too late in college and all that crap. And at some point, I decided I was going to have to get 8 hours of sleep every night, regardless, and it totally changed my life. I felt so much better. I was happier all the time. But it's easy to fall out of it. I've fallen out of it, and I just need to see how it works for other people. That it's really can be a life-changing thing to get adequate sleep every day. What do you got, Ben?
Well, you let me know if this is out of line, but I was going to recommend something that I made a while back.
Nope,
Which is-
that's fair game.
All right.
I endorse it.
All right. Well, see if you do once you hear what it is. I spend a month each morning writing down the dream I had had the previous night, and then making a fake magic card based on that dream.
Mhm.
Those magic cards from the month of April 2014 are all online. I'll be linking to them in the notes below this episode. And that collection of custom magic cards is what I'm recommending.
Okay.
For what reason?
Basically, I feel like it's kind of an interesting take on the idea of describing your dreams to someone. I think it ended up much more readable than if I'd just written out like a paragraph or two description of each of the dreams. But I'm obviously kind of a biased source on this, since dreams are by their nature very personal. Like, I can look at these magic cards, and to me they suggest the particular dreams I had. Like, I can look at any of the cards from this month and remember that dream, which is unusual for me. I generally don't have lasting memories of dreams, but just the act of making something based on them put them in long-term memory for me.
Okay.
And
So
I'm curious
you're
about...
definitely not suggesting that we make our own magic cards. Just read yours. Which I think everybody here has.
What I was going to say is maybe the better suggestion is for us to... But there's all...
I mean, I'm going to say...
I'm not sure magic specifically is going to be a universal approach for that. You know what? The other suggestions have all been activities. I'll say that my suggestion for this week is each morning think about the dream you had the previous night and make something based on that. Doesn't need to be a magic card. It could be, like, I don't know, a drawing, a poem, whatever. As long as it is meaningfully distinct from a short description and summary of your dream.
That's going to be wild, man. This is going to be great. We're all going to get good night's sleep. We're going to make something based on our dreams. We're going to come here next week, and we're going to share all the stuff that we made.
And we're also going to search for our favorite appliances in the search engine and add a color.
Yeah, we're going to do that too. But the next, it should be really good stuff.
Excited about that one.
All right, so I guess, Lewis, is there any other business, or are we wrapped up for tonight?
I believe we're wrapped up. Matt, do you have any what's your take on all this? I mean, I know you don't have a suggestion on it per se, but if you got a voice though.
A Doyle rule. Did
you say a Doyle Bull 8?
That's what I heard.
That's the response I was really looking for, and I appreciate the input. That's why I decided to consult you on the matter. But yeah, I think the curriculum's already full, but I think we got a lot of work to do. But yeah, I think these are good, and I certainly hope our viewers are anticipating not only their future of hearing our futures, but their future as well. So
yeah, and I hope our listeners will be trying to do all this along with us.
Yes,
and
certainly welcome.
I look forward to sharing this journey with them.
I'm excited.
Yeah. Till next week. Good night.
All right.